Bitcoin is struggling to break $60,000 and has investors and traders worried if they should be selling their crypto while stocks continue to move higher. The SPY at 553 and gapping up, as well as the Qs sitting at 474. So, should investors and traders be worried about the stock market and crypto? Well, I wanted to bring this up first. We have a lot of companies right now that are um, doing stock buybacks, and these are some of the biggest investors out there as these companies actually reinvesting in their stock, and typically we see this as bullish as BP shares rise 5% after the giant announces to boost shareholder returns. So we have a lot of big companies starting to buy back their stocks uh, from now through the beginning of September. So that's something to keep in mind. NVDA also getting its gap fill here at 122 and moving higher. So will we see these stocks continue to rise, or should we suspect some sort of weakness here and potentially putting in a lower high and further sell off? Well, we will get into all that in today's video. So be sure to like this video if you want to see more. Be sure to subscribe and let's get into it. All right, guys, so what's going on here with NVIDIA? Well, we could move a bit higher. There is a gap fill setting right around that 126 level. We are in positive gamma here. We have several days here, pretty much 2 weeks now, that we have been moving up, and a lot of these stocks have been gapping up. We see the same thing on the SPY as well as the Qs. And something I just wanted to point out here is from bottom to top, we have about an 8.5% return on the SPY, and we have not seen that since. Take a look at this. I've got to zoom out here quite a bit, but we have not seen this since the bottom of the markets in 2022, where we saw about a 10.3% in the same amount of time. So this market does look bullish still, in my opinion. Of course, that is just my opinion. We could be setting in a higher or lower high, but nevertheless, I do think this is that slow period into summer sell-off that we typically see every year before we go into fall, and which is typically bullish for the markets, particularly in election years. What other stocks can we look at? Well, Amazon setting at 177. And one thing I wanted to point out here on Amazon is it has been a little bit weaker than some of the other big cap stocks. And a lot of that is because consumers are feeling the pain of everything that's going on right now, and people are struggling. But nevertheless, consumer sentiment has recently upticked. We've had a lot of good news this week from inflation, the PPI, forward-looking indicators, and CPI, um, both showing that inflation is coming down. Jobs have been a little bit better than expected, and really even consumer sentiment has been on the rise. So I think there's several positive indicators that is leading to this rally here in the stock market. Um, and on Amazon, It has been underperforming, but we do have a gap fill up here around 184. I'm looking for that gap to be closed. We know these gaps typically are closed, and we do see that a lot of these gaps on different stocks have been already closed or very close to being closed. So that is something to keep in mind. Um, so will we see this market, some weakness in this market? Well, let's just go back to the SPY because there's a couple things I wanted to point out, and we will zoom in here a little bit. So first off, we are reaching overbought conditions on the stochastic RSI. Uh, and we have gapped up here several times. So we could see potentially here a gap or a move down potentially to fill some of these gaps that are left behind. What I would say is we are potentially putting in a possibly a giant inverse head and shoulders pattern here for the SPY. So that's something to keep in mind. But nevertheless, I do think that this market will go higher. I will erase that drawing later. I want to move on though because gold broke out this morning, breaking the all-time high, currently sitting at 2483. So gold is looking bullish. We have some of the metals and defensive plays starting to look more bullish, including things like utilities and healthcare. Uh, but as far as the metals go, it looks like we may have found a base on copper. And so this is good for the markets in the long term. If we do start to see gold turn around, then we know that is signs of strength for the economy moving forward. This is kind of a forward-looking indicator. We also saw, as I mentioned, inflation coming down, PPI, which is a forward-looking indicator, uh, was particularly close to that 2%. We know that the real-time inflation data is now below 2%, so that is something to keep in mind, and that gives the Fed the ability to cut rates, which we suspect will happen in September. Hopefully, we get a 25 basis point rate cut. If it's more than that, that could be very bearish for the markets, meaning that something bigger is broken that we don't know about. But I did want to mention this here on copper because we mentioned this a couple days ago that we had this inverse head and shoulders pattern playing out, signaling that we would get up to around that 420 or 418 mark. And this pretty much hit perfectly to the T. It's amazing how TA does work in these situations when you see these replicable patterns. Um, and so right now, gold is finding some strength. And I did want to just zoom out here on this chart because I wanted to just show you a couple things here that I'm seeing for copper. Here we do see on the daily chart a bottoming around that 786 and currently sitting on the 681 perfectly. I just noticed that. Potentially we are putting in a bigger inverse head and shoulders pattern here for copper. So we will look for a breakout above. I'm just going to go ahead and add an alert probably somewhere around this area here. So if we get above that level, well, I do think you will see copper start to outperform. And we also have the IWM Russell showing a little signs of a recovery. I do think we have probably put in a bottom here, um, at least for the intermediate term for some of these small cap stocks and risk assets. However, I do think there is the possibility that we do see a further pullback if the market does come down. The IWM sitting at 212, and we have our first take profits around 227 to 231. Um, but I did want to zoom out on this chart as well because there is one thing here that I believe may play out, and many other traders I think believe this is possible, and the same Tom Lee from Fundstrat in particular. I know that they are saying that they think that these risk on assets are going to outperform here in the coming days and weeks, and I tend to agree with them. We still have this gap fill here that hasn't been met, like we saw on Amazon. However, it looks like we're putting in a giant cup and handle here, and so if we do get back above this area and break these all-time highs, well, we could be going much, much higher on a lot of these small cap stocks. I do think we are in late cycle investing, and that these markets could continue to run for the next year or so. So that is something to keep in mind. I think investors are going to other asset classes outside of the mega cap stocks to find better returns. And so that is also something to keep in mind. And of course, a lot of investors are building some defensive positions, which I think is a good idea as well, just to hedge and have a little safety and manage risk. However, I do think that a lot of these risk on assets will come back to life here very soon. I think that we will see further strength for the next few weeks as we head into September, with possibly another potential sell-off before things get really wild in the fall for risk assets. Saw this yesterday that the SEC approves MicroStrategy long ETF, and Marty Party posted this over here on X. And basically, MicroStrategy has now launched a leveraged uh, MSTR fund, and it is ticker symbol MSTX, and it is a 1.75x leverage. So that is interesting. I hadn't heard anything about this until yesterday. Nevertheless, this fund did launch and it is trading. So I found that interesting. One thing I would say about this is anytime funds like this are launched, generally there is a lot of hype. Investors get in, and then everything sells off, and the retail investor is left holding the bag. So that's something I'd be cautious about, I should say. Um, Nevertheless, I do think that once this fund does have some time to prove if investors are interested, and potentially does sell off a bit, that I'd be looking for a bottom to get in on this, because MSTR actually already acts as leverage relative to Bitcoin. It outperforms Bitcoin by about 180% or so. And so MSTR is in a way already levered, but that's just because that their strategy is to borrow money at a very low interest rate to buy the dips on Bitcoin. What other stocks can we look at? I just wanted to bring this one up. I haven't talked about this stock in a long time. This is ARK, AARK, and what I found interesting here is basically we have put in a third low, higher low here for ARC, and it is currently sitting at 43.99. And this is one of those stocks that could really outperform in the markets when risk on comes back into the markets. Right now, we have kind of been risk off as investors and traders are a bit worried about going forward. Nevertheless, these macro cycles tend to play out time and time again. This is what we have seen with the macro really since the great financial crisis, that there are these swings in the market. We know that we have the things like the 7-year business cycle and these 4-year swings in crypto. So I do think that ARKK is going much higher. And whenever I pulled up this chart this morning, I did notice this one headline over here that says Wall Street analysts suspect that ARK could do 221%. So that is interesting. Do have our first take profit here around $50 to $52 on ARK. One thing I would point out is there is a gap fill down here. So if we did happen to fall back down, we could potentially fill that gap. We do see these gap fills, uh, gaps here on these markets on several stocks that is lower, such as NVDA. If we just zoom out here, we did get this gap fill here, um, but there is still gaps left behind. That's what happens here in these markets whenever we see these runs. We do have this gap fill down here. So that's just something to keep in mind. Um, Nevertheless, that doesn't mean that gap has to be filled immediately. We could continue to possibly pull back here a bit and then find more strength before breaking all-time highs and go into that euphoria blow off top style market. I think that's where we're heading. I think that these markets will continue to go higher for the next 6 to 12 months. And then eventually that gap may get filled on the way back down. I do think that we probably are heading into some sort of bigger bear market correction or possibly recession. But nevertheless, I think we still have another 6 to 12 months, like I said, and I think these markets probably will break these previous all-time highs. It just seems like there is a lot of more of the broader market starting to come along now with these big cap stocks, so that is good. And these bull runs and trends can last for much longer than you think. If you're interested in buying stocks, commodities, gold, or crypto, you can do so with Robinhood. Right now, Robinhood is offering a 1% boost when you open an account and 8 times the national savings rate. They allow you to begin building your portfolio with just as little as $1, and they allow you to invest in stocks, options, and ETF and trade commission free. If you're interested, there is a link down below. When you sign up, you will get one free stock with Robinhood, and if you use the link below, you get an additional stock, and they offer things such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, and many more. So if you are interested, you can click that link. Yes, it is a referral link, so I do appreciate it. And it's what allows me to continue to make these videos. Uh, but let's get on into Bitcoin and what's going on in the crypto market, because that's why you are probably here based off the thumbnail of this video. Um, what I wanted to point out here with Bitcoin, this is the Bitcoin heat map, liquidation heat map, and this is the weekly, so that shows you where the liquidity's at. We see that we have here on the weekly, we have this liquidity setting around 60 $60,000. So I do suspect that we may see a sweep of that here in the coming days. We have a little bit higher sitting around $62,000, but more importantly, I wanted to zoom out here to the monthly chart because whenever there is fear in the markets and you're feeling fearful, well, the best thing is to zoom out and you see that you have this liquidity hitting sitting here still around $70,500. And I did also just want to point this out on the 3-month chart as well, just to get a better idea, because you see at $70,000 range, and then there is more sitting above. I really don't see much down here to the downside, so that means that the most likely move next is for Bitcoin to move up. And if you look at this Bitcoin chart, as I mentioned, we have this giant inverse head and shoulders pattern playing out for Bitcoin. So did we see the bottom over here? Well, I think so. Could we go lower? Yes. I think it's possible that maybe we go down and possibly retouch this trend line. That would put us about halfway through that wick. This wick here, I'll zoom in on this just a little bit so you can see better. So we had this wick down, and typically this wick is a sign of inefficiency, and it does get at some point typically filled. So we could see Bitcoin potentially go back down around that $52,000 level. I think that's a possibility. I think there is probably about maybe say a 40% chance of that happening. Um, but I think if that were to happen, it would be very quick. Uh, so that's just something to keep in mind. Nevertheless, I do think Bitcoin is going higher, and I think that if we can get back above this $60,000 range, I think that will be bullish for Bitcoin, and particularly if we can get back up around this range here, the $63,000 level. Oh, I think that will be very bullish for Bitcoin. A couple things I want to point out on the RSI is we do have the RSI 14 close. Kind of, you see this yellow trend line here leveling off. Anytime we see this RSI come towards the bottom side and then start going towards the upside, that's when you get these big candles going to the upside. And so I do think that Bitcoin will continue to show strength here for the coming days and weeks. Like I said, I think we may still see some weakness in September. Nevertheless, I think this is probably the absolute last time that investors and traders are going to be able to get in down here at these levels before the bull run kicks off. I do think this fall will be very bullish for Bitcoin and crypto. What's happening with the other cryptocurrencies and altcoins? Well, this is the total three, everything minus Bitcoin and Ethereum. And as you see here, we have been showing a lot of signs of weakness, but nevertheless, we have put in a higher low, just like we saw with that RK stock. And so these crypto stocks act like a risk on assets, something as such as some of the small cap stocks. And I do think that these risk on assets will eventually do very well. Why? Because we have things like this. We have Ansem, which is a crypto trader, said down another $250,000 in the last month, seriously thinking about cashing out here and leaving this shit space once and for all. I'll be the first to admit I no longer have an edge. I'm completely lost in this market. I've been trading like crap and making all the wrong moves. And that's what happens in these markets. You see the crypto fear and greed at a 27 when we were just in greed last month. And another thing I wanted to point out here on the crypto fear and greed is we are at a level that we have not seen since uh, the end of 2022. This was when Bitcoin was at the lows down below $16,000. So that's something to keep in mind. It's always best to buy when there is a lot of fear and blood in the streets. So that's something I would keep in mind. And one other crypto that I did want to mention is Solana, setting at 138. And Solana here is actually holding up a lot better than several of the other altcoins. And really, even seems to be finding strength relative to Bitcoin. I think that you are going to see some of these altcoins really rip whenever we do see risk on assets come back to life. And I think that window is closing very soon. I think that we probably have somewhere between another 4 to 6, possibly 8 weeks before these things really start to take off. If you're interested in buying crypto such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and up to other 35 other cryptocurrencies, you can do so with iTrust Capital. iTrust Capital allows you to buy, sell, and trade crypto, gold, and silver 24/7 with low cost and no monthly fee. And this is a tax advantage IRA. I use iTrust Capital. And so I know whenever you are trading, you will get taxed on any of your gains. That's one advantage to uh, holding these assets in something such as an IRA, so you are not taxed on your gains. That's why I like to use IRAs for investing. If you're interested, there is a link down below, and they have over 5,000 plus 5-star reviews on Google. Plus, they have people that you can actually call and talk to. When you sign up, you will receive an extra $100 if you use the link down below. Um, so it that is something to keep in mind, but nevertheless, I really enjoy using iTrust, and I enjoy those low transaction fees at just 1%. All right, guys, it is Friday. The weekend is almost here. Also, don't forget to follow me over on X. I am Mind of Financier on X. I am Mind of the Financier on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. So you can follow me there as well. And be sure to drop a comment down below. If there's anything you want me to take a look at over here on X, I post anything I see that has to do with the markets, including stocks, commodities, and crypto. All right, guys, I hope you all have a great weekend. Until next time, guys, take care, be legendary, and peace out.